Hello, video game vagabonds. Ray here. I figure since I'm going to review games, I may as well put up a quick guide for anyone that wants a reference on what my scores represent. Just something to take quick note of, the game I have playing in the background is just there to give you something to look at and has nothing to do with a score represented. Before we get started, I'd like to take a moment to address any indie developers out there. First, I'd like to say that I have no delusions of grandeur. I'm just saying this as a precaution. But if for some reason you'd like me to review your game, do not, I repeat, do not send me a game key. I understand that, as an indie developer, game keys are essentially cash money to you guys. That being the case, I'd rather give you my money and help you out than cost you a game sale. If you want me to review your game, please just let me know. Also, as a heads up, in case it ever happens, I will never ask you for multiple keys to give away to promote your game either. With that out of the way, let's get on to the scores. 1. The game doesn't work. I don't mean on a metaphorical level. I mean the game literally doesn't work. This shouldn't be an issue for me since I won't be pulling a Jim Sterling or Fragnostic, who both dive into the cesspool of Steam's new releases page. More power to those guys. Seriously, they do what I never can. Anyway, since this channel is going to focus on the so-called AAA market, we really shouldn't have that problem, right? Right, Warner Brothers? 2. Games with a rating of 2 have unavoidable game-ending bugs and major performance issues to the point of the game becoming unplayable. I mean, games that are rated a 2 out of 10 will actually have a myriad of problems, but we all know there will be a laundry list of issues. An example of this would be, well, the patched version of Arkham Knight on PC. Oh man. I just realized I've ragged on Warner Brothers twice, and I'm playing one of their games in the background. It's kinda dumb. 3. A game with a rating of 3 contains a myriad of bugs that ruin immersion, poor optimization for the system it's being reviewed on, and poor gameplay mechanics in general. As much as I hate to say it, 3s exist in the AAA publisher's world. Look no further than Assassin's Creed Unity. Also, I'm pretty sure there's a joke in there about AAA and 3, but I don't have the ability to make it decent. Oh well, I'll leave that up to you guys. 4. Finally, I can stop talking about broken games, and I mean the actual broken games. So what does it take to get a 4? Well, for starters, if it's a multiplayer game, server issues. Look at any Ubisoft multiplayer game. Bad AI. That's the kind of AI that knows where you're at immediately in a stealth game, or one that doesn't know where you're at in a game with no stealth mechanics. Mechanics that don't mesh well with the general idea of the game, putting shooter and upgrade elements in a survival horror, for example. RPG Maker games. Super obtuse puzzles that required you to play the ARG before the game even released. Ubisoft level of pre-order bonuses. Hashtag iconic. Okay, so that last thing is more of a pet peeve, but come on. We don't need to pre-order games anymore, even if Sean Murray does promise you a fancy spaceship. A good example of a 4 would be The Evil Within, a survival horror game that decided to take away the fear of being underpowered by letting you upgrade various parts of your character. 5. So around here is where I stop talking about bugs because I know how hard it is to find every single bug in a code base that's well over 1,000 lines. Try imagining that with a video game that has over 2 million lines of code. Games rated at 5 have always online requirement for single-player games. Controls that don't quite feel right. Look at Fable 2, it always felt like you were underwater, especially when you were sprinting. Poor balancing in multiplayer experiences. Graphics that belong to an earlier generation. Underdeveloped plot, or one that doesn't really go anywhere. It's worth keeping in mind that while I did talk about games with a rating of 5 having poor graphics, it's not something I'm going to necessarily judge on the game. For example, I wouldn't give Minecraft a 5 out of 10. They went for a very specific looking style. Same with Cuphead, which actually just recently came out. It went with a very specific feel and a very specific style. Even though it doesn't have next-gen graphics, it still looks very good, and that is something that I will never really harshly judge a game on. Actually, now that I think about it, Fable 2 is a good example of a 5 out of 10. The controls really didn't feel right unless you were right in the middle of combat, and the plot really fell apart, especially at the very end. 6. A majority of games are probably going to fall in the 6 of 7 range, just as a heads up. That being said, a 6 has the following qualities. A game that starts out fun but becomes tedious as it goes on. Mechanics that overstay their welcome, like a hacking game that never ever changes. Egregious microtransactions. A game with little to no challenge. Now, the last one is subjective, but if one of the main complaints I'm seeing around the internet is that players don't think the game is challenging enough, then it fits squarely in the 6 category. This doesn't include the new Nintendo games that have things like auto-driving or invincibility mushrooms. You know, the completely optional things that are optional in the game. A good example of a 5 is actually The Division. With its microtransactions and the fact that enemies swiftly stop being a challenge unless you were in the PvP area, the game wouldn't have scored high enough for a 7. Even if I actually did like it. 7. A 7 is an adequate score. It means the game is fun and stays fun, but it's not mind-blowing in its delivery. Things to expect from a game with a 7 are a multiplayer game that's well balanced, something that introduces new concepts but they may not be fleshed out well, offers decent gameplay mechanics, offers a fun plot. Overwatch is a good example of a 7. There's really no plot to it, but the shooting mechanics are very, very fun. The multiplayer feels well balanced, and it has Mei. And Mei? Well, Mei's my bae. 8. An 8 represents an above average game. That's it. It's not too special, but it's still pretty decent. Here's what you should expect from an 8. Introduces a new concept and tries to expand on it. The mechanic may still fall short of its initial promise, or it may just overstay its welcome. An engaging plot that may lose its focus near the end. Has gameplay systems in place like combat mechanics that are solid and feel satisfying throughout the game. I'd actually use Injustice 2 as a good example of an 8 of 10. The combat's fairly fast and is easy to pick up and play, even if you're not great at fighting games. Pro gamers can hold tournaments and actually have fun with it too. But if you're not a pro gamer, it does feel a bit grindy when you're trying to find the right equipment for your character. 9. A 9 is a great game. I mean, it's not the best, but it still stands ahead above the rest. Did that rhyme? I didn't mean for it to rhyme. Here's what you should expect out of a 9 anyways. Has a plot that keeps the player guessing, something where the ending isn't evident halfway through the game. Introduces new mechanics or a new take on older ones in a way that doesn't wear out its welcome. It's a blast to play through from start to finish, or multiple playthroughs if New Game Plus exists. I know this is going to sound dumb, but I'd actually say that Rogue Legacy is a great example of a 9 out of 10. You never get bored of playing a certain class because there are multiple to unlock. The random castle design helps with any sort of playthrough fatigue, and the storyline is actually a pretty fun read. I'd say it's definitely worth a 9 out of 10. 10. I need to point out that there is only one difference between a 9 and a 10. It's a simple one, honestly. A non-existent microtransaction system. Yeah, that's it. If there's any sort of microtransactions, not things classically considered expansion packs or DLC, then the game is ineligible for a perfect score. I refuse to budge on this. My stance is simple. Games are meant to be fun, and offering to skip sections of a video game implies that it is not fun. A game that isn't fun should not get a 10. I hope that's understandable. Yeah, that's all that separates games from 9 out of 10. And under that category, that does mean Rogue Legacy gets a 10 out of 10. I know. I honestly just needed a 9 out of 10. But I would also say Bloodborne is a great game and deserves a 10 out of 10. So there you go. There's my video review guide. I hope this helps put things into frame of mind. Now after all that, I would like to point out, if I ever have to worry about meta rankings and crazy things like that, then my score guide will change. Right now, since I'm not a professional, like, at all, then this is what you can expect out of my review videos. Once again, just so I'm clear, if you're an indie developer, please don't send me a game key for review. I'd rather buy the game and help support you than cost you a sale. Another important note on that too is if I ever contact you and ask for multiple keys so I can give them away to increase your audience, that is not me. That's it, everyone. I mean, if you have any questions, leave a comment down below, and I'll do my best to answer it. So, do I just end the video here? Yeah. Yeah, that sounds good. I need to figure out a better way to end these.